Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art, and this coming week we are going to be painting spring florals. Our project is Dreaming of Spring, so tune in on Tuesday nights. We're going to be painting it live at 7:15 Central Standard Time, but for now, here is a preview. Okay, so for our flowers today, we're going to use a little bit brighter color palette, and we are going to use gouache today. And the colors I'm using are shell pink and olive from the gouache, and I'm going to put a little bleed-proof white on my tray for mixing. Now for these flowers, I start with really concentrated color on my brush, and I'm just using a number 10. And then after I put those first few dashes down, I just use clean water to spread that color out. And after I spreaded it out to make the petals, I drop in the concentrated color right at the center of the flower, and I just let that color kind of spread throughout. And it's gonna create different patterns on all the flowers, different textures, and I just want to let that move on its own. Now for these flowers here, I really want them to seem kind of like blooming and full. So I start with doing like a center dash, and then I bring circular brush strokes up and around that dash that I put. And then after I kind of do overlapping brush strokes, I take water and I blend those kind of together, and then I drop in a little bit of yellow right at that first dot that I put down to show that it's the center of a flower. Now with these, it's just going to take a little bit of practice, but what I really want you to remember with the flowers is we want the brush strokes to be coming up and around that initial center that we put down. Now I'm going to start putting in my larger leaves, and you can choose if you want to do groups of 1, 2, or 3. Now my top left area is looking a little bit bare, a little bit far away from the flower, so I chose to do a group of 3 leaves there just to kind of fill that space more. And now we're going to go in and we're going to do our medium-sized leaves and stems. So really I just kind of go around in a circle around the painting, and I start putting in the stems where I think it needs a little bit of space coming out, and then also the flower buds around the edge. And I use flower buds around the edge because I want there to be a little bit of color on the edge. That way it's not just totally green on the very edge of my painting. I like to have little spurts of color there that are in the center as well. Now I'm using my bleed-proof white and Norway blue and a little bit of green to make this really pretty turquoise color that I'm going to use for these leaves. And this is just to add a little bit different color in here. Now you can choose whatever color you like, but for me I'm trying to think of the spring and kind of more pastel colors. And so I'm going more with the peaches and the baby blues, turquoise blues, and the pinks. Now I'm going to start adding in my smaller flowers, my smaller leaves, my kind of filler leaves. And this color here is mainly the olive green, just the gouache, which is actually, I know it's called olive, but it's actually a pretty nice gold color. And I did some leaves in between the flowers here because there were a little bit of white spaces, but I didn't have enough room to put a full flower. So I just went in and I put in some leaves, and that actually makes it look like it's really blooming, that it's really full, and that it's kind of coming out at you with flowers. Now for the line work that we're doing on these flowers here, you want to make sure that you're using a liner brush. So it's very, very thin. I think I'm using a liner 4 here. And then I'm going to take some really concentrated color. And you can see right there that when I put down that line, it kind of bled a little, which is why I stopped doing the line work on that petal, which meant that that petal is still wet, and you only want to do line work when the petals are dry. So if you lay down a line and it starts to bleed, just kind of stop. You don't need to touch it, just kind of move on to a different flower or petal until you know everything is dry. Now when you do these lines here, try and make it so your lines are not completely straight. I kind of like to follow the curve of my petal, and that helps give the petal shape. But if you're not at the skill level where you feel comfortable doing such small detail work lines, if you just want to do a couple little lines going straight out from the center, that's fine too. It's going to look beautiful no matter what kind of lines you do on these flowers. Now for the center of the flowers, I want to do this last because I want the center of the flowers to go over the line work that I do. So I'm just going to add a little bit of yellow to the center here. And while that's drying, I'm going to do some smaller filler leaves around the edges. I'm just looking to see where there are white spaces. And then I'm going to go back in and start doing the little dots around the center of my flower. Now for my purple ones, I'm using kind of a darker color so they can be seen well. But the peaches, you can just use the kind of yellow color or the olive gouache to do those dots around that center. Just take this time to kind of look through, see where else you need some space, some leaves to fill up some white space. And if you feel like you've added all that you can add, then this painting is done.
Perfect.
I went down.